Greetings from Costa Rica, and thank you very much for joining me. My name is Matt Rosensteel, and I'm the owner-broker of Latitude 10 Realty here in Playa Junquial, Guanacaste, Costa Rica. Tonight, bringing you once again our live Costa Rica chat with Costa Rica Matt, our Wednesday night, April 20th edition here is the first episode after a 1-week hiatus last week for Semana Santa. I know everybody has been desperately waiting for the return of Costa Rica Matt after my absolutely unprecedented series of 14 consecutive videos prior to Semana Santa. Thank you very much again for joining us. Our topic tonight is going to be navigating Costa Rica. And specifically, I want to try and give people some simple, practical advice for driving around, finding your way around the country. We're going to cover, first of all, some basics about Costa Rica geography and how you can get around the full country. Second, we're going to talk about how Costa Ricans give directions, both in urban situations and rural situations. Third, we'll go over road signs and some very important signs that you have to watch out for. And finally, we're going to go over some tips and etiquette for driving here in Costa Rica. I also mentioned, that there is some earth-shattering news once again, as I've previously brought to you here in my channel. One of the things that you may not know about Latitude 10 Realty is that our backbone, one of the most important people in our team, is a young man named Daniel Rodriguez, who tonight is celebrating his 1-year anniversary as a member of the Latitude 10 Realty team. Daniel joined me in April 2021. He's been an incredible person to work with, and over the last year, he's helped me grow my business. He's helped in innumerable ways, both with YouTube, with everything that I do. And I couldn't be more appreciative of Daniel. Normally, he's sitting there in the background. You don't see him. He's controlling my incredible YouTube broadcasts from the shadows and adding all of the incredible content that you've come to know and love. One of the things that I definitely want to do tonight is say thank you to Daniel, because frankly, as a virtual assistant, somebody who's working from San Jose, he has helped me in almost every way possible. He's there for me when I'm researching comps and trying to provide data. He's there for me when I need to send MailChimp newsletters or get better content on the web. And he's there for me very much in pretty much every way, even though he's been working for me remotely. So Danielle, really, I appreciate it. And just want to, it's empty.
Hey, man, got you.
Thanks, Danielle.
Hey, guys.
That's right. Danielle has moved out to Guanacaste. He's going to be spending time here in the Latitude 10 office, so it's going to get even better from here on out. Stay tuned. Good evening, folks. We're live from Costa Rica, like we are every Wednesday night for our live Costa Rica chats. Tonight, our topic is navigating Costa Rica. We're going to go over geography and some of the basics of finding your way around. We're going to go over how Costa Ricans provide directions. We're going to go over road signs. And finally, we're definitely going to cover some of the tips and etiquette for driving here. Just some basic pointers to try and give you an idea of what it means to drive here and how you can be a more friendly driver here in the country. Before we get started, I did want to invite Daniel, who's now sitting in the office, to come on camera for just a second. He may not have known I was going to actually invite him. Grab your chair.
No, I didn't know. Yeah.
Daniel, thank you very much for joining me here in Guanacaste.
Thank you for inviting me.
Ooh, we got a weird angle there.
Yeah.
Now we're better. He's normally controlling everything from the background and you wouldn't see him. He's been a virtual digital assistant working from San Jose, and now he's here in Guanacaste. So cheers to Daniel. Cheers to everything you've done for me over the last year. One of the things that I wanted to do as an absolute surprise is definitely inform Daniel that after a year working with me, I would be a huge hypocrite here in Costa Rica if I talked online various times about paying people what they're worth and being exceedingly generous to make sure that you get quality service providers. I definitely want to mention that as of your year anniversary, you are getting a raise. And it's big percentage-wise, but it's minuscule compared to what you actually deserve. Daniel.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Really, it really means a lot. Thank you guys for being such a good audience and support the channel. Really, I'm getting my drink.
Daniel is going to get his drink because he's going to participate in one of these segments here. And one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight in our discussion of how you navigate the country, I think you could very much help us with giving Costa Rican directions as to how to arrive at a place. Daniel lives in San Jose, the Central Valley, where if we're talking about the basics of Costa Rica geography, you'll see that there are very few, now that you're not controlling the back, I'm really in trouble here.
Don't worry.
No, it's totally fine. We'll get it. Why can't I bring this up? The share should work with this.
Yeah.
Here we go. We're looking at a map of Costa Rica, and Daniel is from the Central Valley here, where San Jose, the urban areas, actually have something resembling a grid of roads. It's different finding your way around San Jose than the parts of Costa Rica that I'm in. And rather than go with the expected order, I want to start out with a quick discussion of directions here. And so, for example, Daniel, if I was going to ask somebody for the address of a Costa Rica destination in the Central Valley, how would you describe where your house is, for example, or where your parents' house is in
the Central Valley?
In the Central Valley.
Okay. What I do is to get a central point that mostly people know, like UCR, that's the University of Costa Rica, or it depends on the people, right? For foreigners, it's very difficult to explain it because they don't know a lot of these places, right? So, well, with technology, I just show them with Google Maps.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I just say, like, you take this bus, or you can, like, in the UCR pools, the faculty of physical education, they can just go up in Sabanilla and they can find my home on
a bus line. And that's an important concept to understand first and foremost here. If you're trying to find your way around in Costa Rica, or if you're looking for an address, you're going to see that people base their addresses off a major landmark. and directions or addresses are based on a major landmark. I live, my physical address here in Costa Rica is 1 kilometer east of the soccer field of Paraíso, the town that we live closest to. And for a lot of people, especially US and Canadian expats, or anybody visiting Costa Rica, that's a very different concept. A Costa Rican will explain to you how to get somewhere based on a major point of reference and then the relative directions from there. So for example, you were talking about helping people get to your house.
Yeah.
You go to the Facultad de whatever.
This physical education.
Yeah, so the PE department of a particular university, and then you take a certain bus line in a certain direction.
Yeah.
My address here in Costa Rica is actually, like I was mentioning, 1 kilometer east of a soccer field in this neighborhood, lot number 2. If, 10 years ago you were in San Jose and someone wanted to explain where a pharmacy was, they might say, desde el Banco Nacional 200 al norte, which literally would be from Banco Nacional 200 meters to the north.
To the north, yeah.
Now, 200 meters sounds like a pretty precise address, but what does that 200 meters actually mean?
That you probably don't know where your house is.
Yeah. A lot of people explaining addresses have actually no idea what they're talking about, and they're giving an approximation. And sorry, we had literally the door to the office broke before this broadcast, so we have an open door so that we're able to leave in case of emergency, and so we could pull our stunt here. But their address might be from the National Bank in this neighborhood, 200 meters to the north. And if it's a situation where people are giving an actual precise address for that building, the 200 meters refers to 2 blocks. Whether the block is 50 meters long or 150 or 300 meters, they just use 200 al norte, 200 meters to the north, or 200 meters to the south, west, east, etc. And that can be the physical address of a lot of important buildings here in Costa Rica. Many people say, oh, well, they don't have an address to which I can mail something. And that's actually false, because the postal system here works, and your address, the directions that people give the postman to find your house, involve that actual description of where your property is. How often do you think Costa Ricans underestimate the distance between 2 points?
Oh, totally. All the time. Because we don't use it a lot. My generation doesn't use it a lot. It's just like, you're going to see the red house and you will know you're here, or something like that. And even in the Correos de Costa Rica, the official mail in national stuff, they ask you for a sign or something to know that is your house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And your address concludes with an actual description of your house. So you're looking at, my address could be La Casa, the end of it would be home with the red roof, where you've got my actual address being 1 kilometer east of the soccer field in Paraíso, Barrio Pueblo Verde, which is the neighborhood that I'm in, and then Casa con Techo Rojo, Lote Número 2, and really a long description of where you are.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Danielle's generation, and despite how knowledgeable and incredibly skilled he is, you're only
22
years old. He's already seen this transition where people are largely using other things. And what would you say in your generation people use to find their way around Costa Rica?
Ways.
Waze.
Yeah.
WAZE. You might have heard of it and used it if you're from the US or Canada. But here in Costa Rica, like I've mentioned previously, WhatsApp can be an incredibly important app on your phone because you can communicate with everybody. Waze has to be by far the most important navigation app anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, even when I'm coming here, I share with you my live location on WhatsApp because you're like, okay, now take this bus. Now let's go there and here, and that actually works too. But Waze is like top on the competition on the location. Yeah.
If you're coming to Costa Rica and you hope to find your way around, navigate the country by yourself, consider downloading Waze, again, WAZE, onto your phone because it's what pretty much everybody uses here.
Yeah.
Danielle, thank you for appearing. I'll let you head over to the other desk because we might need some audio-visual help here in a moment, and I'll just take over here.
Yes.
But
thank you, guys.
Yeah. We'll move into solo vlog mode here. And what I do want to mention is that if you're one of my real estate clients out there, you will probably be interacting with Danielle, whether or not you know it. He's the one who helps me pull data from the national registry so that we can provide information about comps. He's the one who produces social media ads to try and draw leads to me. He's also quickly evolving into a world-class realtor and salesperson himself. And someday soon, I'm going to be having people work directly with him in order for me to have a more manageable schedule, but also to provide him with the opportunity to grow because he absolutely deserves it. And if you can put up with Costa Rica Matt for a full year, then you definitely deserve a greater opportunity for sure. Let's go back a minute. I wanted to touch, before getting into the discussion on directions, with a general overview of the geography of Costa Rica and what you'll be looking at finding your way around the country in order to give you this broad perspective here. And Danielle will pull back in the map here, and I may have to do that. Absolutely. So we're looking at the entire country of Costa Rica. We'll switch to the map view so that we can get a simpler understanding. If you're considering visiting the country, it's incredibly important to understand, first and foremost, that unlike the United States, there are very few paved roads here. It's something you've probably read about online if you're researching, and it's something you will instantly find out when you come to the country and try and visit locations that aren't on a major route. You will see that really looking throughout the country, despite the Costa Rica being the size of West Virginia as a size comparison, these yellow lines and maybe 20 to 30% more of the roads that you don't see here are the only paved roads in the country. Now, obviously, in San Jose, you have a totally different situation. Where Danielle is from, in the Central Valley, it's an urban, paved, absolute paradise for drivers. You have a modern road system here. I will qualify that modern comment with a bit saying that, yeah, it does seem a bit crazy to anybody who's visiting. But outside of the Central Valley, as soon as you head off either to the Caribbean or to Guanacaste, our northwestern province, or down to Punta Arenas here along the coast, you're going to see that there are major thoroughfares that are paved and virtually nothing else. And that's extremely important to understand because many of your tourist destinations, many of the beaches that you want to explore, and many of the connecting roads between major points of interest, the national parks, volcanoes, on and on, are unpaved roads that are going to be, quite frankly, a bear to drive down. So if you're looking at the map of Costa Rica and you hope, well, look, this is only the size of West Virginia, the entire surface area of the country, many people would immediately think, well, I can drive from Nicoya to San Jose, halfway across the state of West Virginia would take me a couple hours. Here it should be an easy jaunt. And that's absolutely not the case here because, first of all, due to the fact that only those major thoroughfares are paved, you get really large amounts of traffic on those major arteries. You've got traffic, choked up on these highways that are frequently only 2-lane roads that is far beyond the scale of what you would expect. So, for example, not to hammer on West Virginia, but they've got 4-lane, 6 and 8-lane superhighways in different parts of the state. In Costa Rica, you have 2-lane highways as the vast majority, and there are probably only a few, less than 1% of the total roadways that go beyond a 2-lane road. For example, the Inter-American Highway, which comes through Costa Rica down its west coast, you'll see it here, this route that comes down as number 1, down from Nicaragua, all the way through Cañas, down through Punta Arenas, eventually into the Central Valley, and all the way down to Panama. The Pan American Highway, this important artery that connects Costa Rica to Panama and to Nicaragua, that's a 2-lane highway for the vast majority of what it is. So imagine on that important highway that you have Frito-Lay trucks exporting goods from Mexico all the way down to Colombia. You have traffic that is moving goods and services all the way through Central America. It's an entirely different game than what you're looking at in the US or Canada, where if you have a major highway connecting 2 important points, you'll expect that it's 4 lanes as you approach that city and 2 lanes only when it's in rural areas. So the upshot of that is that even if you're imagining, okay, this is a short distance from Nicoya to San Jose, I can't imagine it's more than 150 miles tops or some relatively short road trip distance. You can spend twice or 3 times the amount of time on the road completing that trip because, this is not a super highway that you can do 70 miles an hour on consistently. You can drive 70 miles an hour from Nicoya down to San Jose over this bridge for very short stretches, and those stretches come to a grinding halt the moment that you're behind one of those trucks. And especially you imagine these highways, 2-lane roads, again, are most often going up steep inclines because Costa Rica is such a broken topographical country. You've got old Central American trucks trying to rattle up these relatively steep grades. And guess what? If you're behind them as they're headed up a grade, you just have to wait behind them. They might be doing 15 to 30 miles an hour, even on what you consider to be a major route. And the only way to go around them is to absolutely risk your life and well-being because, yeah, you're headed uphill and trying to race around trucks. I've personally been in a bus that was coming from San Jose out to Guanacaste that had to slam on its brakes because the bus driver was trying to pass some of these trucks in an area of the road where they absolutely shouldn't have. And we slammed on our brakes to avoid a head-on collision with a vehicle in the other lane. There were only 2 lanes. The bus driver wants to pass these trucks because they have a deadline, because they're probably going insane dealing with these roads. And you see that kind of situation all the time because they're narrow and the traffic flows nowhere near as fast as I-65 or 70 or the interstates in the US. They are simply the infrastructure that Costa Rica can afford, and it doesn't mean building super wide roads. So if you're planning a trip here and you're looking at these distances, imagining a massive, amazing Costa Rica road trip, plan on your amazing road trip involving lots of slow and steady time behind trucks. Plan twice as much time to get between 2 points that Google Maps might tell you, and to really be ready to take trips in shorter distances, because the great Costa Rican road trip doesn't exist. There's no Route 66 and the fun of there's no Autobahn and the amazing ability to just drive as fast as you want. These are narrow roads. You will have to be patient. And if you don't want to risk your life going around those trucks, you're going to end up spending a huge amount of time on the road. To go on here and to talk a little bit more about directions, Danielle and I were discussing the fact that every direction here and an address is based on a major physical landmark that mostly Costa Ricans or foreigners with a lot of experience here would know. In Santa Cruz, the city that's 30 minutes from me, I've lived here 14 years, and now, only after 14 years, I fully understand what people are telling me if I'm trying to find the pet shop or the gas station or whatever, because they'll tell me, yeah, you go to this major landmark first, and then you find what you're actually looking for based on my directions. And in fact, understanding Spanish, they'll say, del Banco Nacional 100 al norte y 400 al este, or del Parque 200 al norte y 200 al este. From the park, 200 north and 200 east. One important cultural note to make here, and something that Danielle sort of brought up, is that Costa Ricans are incredibly agreeable, and they will give you directions to something that they have no idea where it actually is. And he just started laughing at that point, because, yes, you'll meet a Costa Rican and say, tell me where the Sherwin-Williams paint shop is. And it's culturally inappropriate, really something that Costa Ricans don't do often, and especially Guanacastecos here in our province. They don't want to say just, got no idea where it is. They will scratch their head, look off, and then try and estimate where this building is that you're looking for. Better or worse, they'll give you what they think is their honest appraisal of where this thing is, and it may be entirely wrong. Cross-referencing any kind of Costa Rican direction here is always a good idea. If someone says, you just go to the park and it's only 600 metros al sur, you should probably ask another person before you go walking 600 meters to the south of the park. It's really easy to do. You can stop the next person on the street and say, I'm looking for the Sherwin-Williams paint store. And they might tell you, del Parque 800 al este. And pretty soon you can realize that this is something that people don't really know where it is, and don't necessarily put 100% of your faith and don't invest heavily in any one Costa Rican's sense of direction. It's not that they're lying. It's not at all that they're trying to be mean and steer a foreigner off into the wilderness. It's literally because here it's very difficult for Costa Ricans just to say, no idea. God, can't help you. In the US, you see that very frequently. What are you asking me for the directions to this bank? I've got no idea. Go on your way. Costa Ricans culturally really want to help you, and they also want to be polite and very accommodating. They will not look at you and just say, but you need to ask somebody else. I've got no idea. More often than not, they'll give you an answer, whether it's wrong or right, just because their sincerest desire is to be helpful and to be polite. And honestly, you have to think about the way you even phrase questions, where I wouldn't necessarily ask a stranger, where is this exact thing? The Tienda Sherwin-Williams. I'd much more prefer to start off with a conversation. Hey, I'm looking for paint, and I've heard there's a Sherwin-Williams store here. Have you heard of the Sherwin-Williams store? And maybe you'll get a better sense as to whether or not that person actually has an idea where the landmark is. If you say, where is this? They'll answer positively and try and help you, even if it's wrong. If you start the conversation with, hey, what do you know about this paint store? You should be able to read whether or not they've got any idea as to the existence of that store. And a Costa Rican who knows where it is immediately going to say, oh yeah, that store, you go down to the statue, you take 200 meters to the left and then another 400 to the south. This can be very difficult if you don't speak Spanish, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you don't. But if you do, it can be one of the most entertaining ways to see a city. And in all Costa Rican towns, if you're having trouble orienting yourself, if you don't have a cell phone, if you don't have any way to actually tell those cardinal directions, usually you can find a park with a church on it. The churches are almost universally Catholic, the ones that were on parks, and a really fun, successful hack for finding your way around Costa Rica is that all Catholic, it's not a church, it's all Catholic cathedral doors face west. So go to the park, find the church, look at the doors. That's your west orientation. And most of the things that you'll be looking for can probably be based off of the location of that church. Steve posted a great, no, actually, we had a restricted comment. First of all, I'll let that slide, John Miller. You used one 4-letter word that YouTube had temporarily blocked. Steve wanted to ask, does a navigation system work in Costa Rica? The answer is absolutely yes. We have Waze, we have Google Maps. What you need is a data connection between with the device that you're trying to use and that navigation system. So my discussion about directions, everything is moot if you have that data connected phone. And probably it's an anachronism to bring up how you actually find things. But yes, Waze and Google Maps work here in Costa Rica if your device is connected to data. And a lot of people get off the plane, they open Google Maps and expect to be able to find their way around. And if your phone doesn't have any plan or a connection to that satellite, the maps are going to do nothing for you. It has to actually be a data connection. Finally, I'm going to wrap up talking about directions, just generally saying one of the other cultural tendencies that Costa Ricans have is to underestimate the gravity of anything. Let's put that in the most general sense. They even have, the reason they're called ticos is because they use the diminutive form of words very frequently, where they say, vamos a pasar un ratico, a very small amount of time. Whereas rato is the normal word for an amount of time. Ratico, when you add that ending, shortens or rather it makes the word smaller. You can say, espéreme un momentico, ¿verdad? Yeah, Danielle doesn't hear that. What would you say are the most diminutive that you most frequently hear? I put him on the spot again here. No. Now that I have my co-host, I'm going to just refer to him as often as I want. Ratito. Yeah. Ito. Absolutely. Another form of the diminutive is the ITO or ITA ending of a word. Espérame un ratito. And that means, yeah, just a little bit. That Costa Rican, whenever they're diminishing the volume of the word, it's part of a cultural tendency that actually is trying to make everything more agreeable and easier. And you see this very much in directions and people helping you try and find a place. When I first moved to my community of La Florida in, just 7 kilometers from where we are now, I was told, to go to the beach, it's probably 15 minutes walking, no problem. And several people gave that sort of estimate, we just walk to the beach, it's no problem. So one day I set off towards the beach thinking, this is going to be a walk in the park. I went with a younger friend from Florida, and it was probably a 45-minute hike that for me was one of the most physically challenging things I've ever done, where everybody in town was just saying, no, se va a la playa unos minutitos, 15 minutitos. Using that, it's no problem, you've got a short distance to go is very, very common. I remember another time when my wife and I were in Limon on the other side, we rented a scooter and somebody told us a restaurant was a short 10-minute drive away, just down the road. Sigue ahí directo, no hay problema. 15 minutos está ahí, you'll be there in 15 minutes, no problem. And we set out on this scooter and we ended up halfway to Panama, bugs in our teeth, just wondering what the heck this was, because we just figured that direction, the advice they were giving us was accurate. Again, it was inaccurate, not at all because Costa Ricans want to lie or that they're trying to throw foreigners for some loop. It's inaccurate because it's their way of looking at life, and really, it's the polite way to make anything sound easier. And culturally here, everyone tries to make things sound smaller and not as difficult when they're answering a question for somebody. And so if you get told, you can be in Tamarindo in 15 minutes, no problem, or, just drive over to the store, it's 5 minutes down the road, you should understand easily it could be twice, 3 times, even 4 times as long as what the Costa Rican might be telling you. Greg, love your comment. Adobe rental car offers Wi-Fi devices for $10 a day. I absolutely agree. If you can get a cheap Wi-Fi device to keep your phone plugged into navigation the entire time you're here, absolutely, you should do it. Let's move on to road signs in Costa Rica. And in particular, there are a couple that I want to address that really are the ones you need to understand in order to survive and not have incidents on the highway here. First of all, there are a lot of bridges in the country that are only one lane. How can a bridge be one lane? Because you'll have traffic going in two directions. Well, it's the absolute reality of the situation. This is not a country where you can afford to just build two-lane bridges and massive infrastructure over every river. If we brought up the map of Guanacaste, you'll see that there's a creek or river every 2 kilometers. It's broken terrain again. And so you see frequently one-lane bridges and one-lane areas where, yes, it's an incredibly dangerous situation because you have two directions of traffic that have to find their lane over one lane of bridge. And as a result, what you'll see is a yield sign. In Costa Rica, it's called the CEDA, CEDA. I'll ask Danielle to bring up an image of a CEDA sign. It was on the thumbnail of the YouTube video. You'll recognize CEDA and the inverted triangle from the US, or I assume Canada, that these things are absolutely universal. The triangle is there, absolutely. That means yield. In Costa Rica, this can be an incredibly important sign to respect. Whereas in the US, it might be that, you just have to let other lanes pass you. Here, it defines who has the right to come across the bridge, and it defines who should stop to save their own lives, to put it that way. You'll pull up to a one-lane Bailey bridge on a river, and you might not even be able to see what's happening on the other side. But what you need to look for is the CEDA and, okay, which side here is legally designated to respect the other side? We have 2 instances. To go grocery shopping in Santa Cruz, there are 2 different locations where a CEDA sign literally determines who can come flying across a bridge as fast as they want and who has to wait respectfully on their side. Above and beyond all else, this one sign is the one that I would really recommend looking for as you drive through the country, because yes, it's not just who can pass and who should actually wait. This is the right of way across a one-lane bridge or a one-lane stretch of highway, where if you're not the one respecting it, you could end up in a heap of twisted metal. Then sorry to be dramatic like that, but the importance of figuring out who is cedando, or cediendo, it would be the pase, giving the right of way to the other side, is extremely important. As you approach a bridge, if you don't see a CEDA on your side, I highly recommend looking for and making sure that it's on the other side, because you do see situations where the sign is destroyed, maybe it was never put up or whatever, but you want to make sure, or there could also be a situation where you don't see it on your side, but it's been covered by vegetation. And so you come up to the bridge, and if you don't see one on the other side, just slow down and make sure that you're not going to be the one that assumes, they're going to be yielding to me, I'm going to fly across this bridge. Guess what? They may have completely the opposite idea if they don't have that CEDA sign, and you could end up in a load of trouble. Another sign that we need to touch base on, there are many roads here that are one direction, and illogically, you can be driving in a city where suddenly you go from a 2-direction road to a 1-direction road where, you're still headed on the same path, but all of a sudden, coming at you, both lanes are in the opposite direction. And you'll see a sign that says, "No Ipaso," which really is, I can't even think of the English translation right now, but if we can pull up the sign, you'll recognize it. Don't go ahead. In Nicoya, for example, a city that's very close to where we're sitting, there's a road that you drive into town. It's two ways as you're on it. And all of a sudden, you come to a moment in the highway where it says, no Ipaso, there's not passage. You can't go through here. And it would be described as do not enter. And that can happen a lot more frequently here in Costa Rica because the way that, the same problem, the lack of enormous infrastructure, where in the US, well, they'll just build another road so that people can stay straight and not have to turn. You might actually find situations where you're driving down a city road in Costa Rica and suddenly your road is stopped in this direction, no Ipaso. You can't get through here. And all of a sudden, on this side, it's two lanes coming your way, and you have to turn one way or the other. It seems crazy and almost unfair, unjust, etc., that you could be driving down a road and all of a sudden, no, you have to stop and take a different road. But it's very frequent in these cities, not necessarily large ones, but I'm thinking of Santa Cruz, our municipal capital, Nicoya, Liberia, on, where you're headed down a road and all of a sudden, nope, no Ipaso. Now the two lanes are coming towards you. You need to turn one way or the other and find a different route. Next, one sign you should be watching out for sure. There are lots of speed bumps here built on roads that you would think are just highways. I remember I grew up in a city where our 2-lane rural roads would never have a speed bump in them. They were, 55 miles an hour, fly down this sucker with no hesitation. And in Costa Rica, speed bumps are frequently the only way that a small community can ensure that people aren't constantly getting in accidents, because you'll be on these highways and it's really the only paved road through town. So for example, to leave my house, and I'll bring up a map here just to show, that this is the sign, perfect, reductor, speed bump. Watch out for these, even on a road you would think should be allowing you to drive as fast as you want, because all of a sudden they might have speed bumps in small communities. For example, to go to my example of us driving into Santa Cruz, I leave my house here just outside of Paraíso. We drive down 928, which is a paved major highway. This is the road that I brag about so much that brings you so easily to Playa Junquial. And if you were just flying along this road, you'd feel like you were in rural Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, etc. And that, yeah, I can just fly along this thing. It's no problem. But guess what? The major road brings you to the community first of Rio Seco here. And all of a sudden, all of this development in these houses are along a 2-lane highway. What Costa Rica frequently does is add speed bumps along this stretch, because if they just let people drive as fast as they wanted, you'd have mountains of problems. There are kids who live in every house along the road. There's a church, there are supermarkets. You go from a rural road paradise where you'd feel comfortable driving 70 miles an hour. All of a sudden, you're in a small community, and that's the main drag through town. Well, guess what? There are some major speed bumps right before you get into town that are there to protect the lives of people and make sure that everybody has to slow down to a reasonable speed. To further go along with this example, between my house over here and Santa Cruz, which is further over here, the municipal capital I've talked about so much. There are speed bumps in Rio Seco. There are more up here in Las Delicias, another community. We make 2 turns over here, and then there are further speed bumps in 3 locations between Santa Cruz and this highway, where, once again, you drive along certain sections of this road and you think, I could be doing 80 miles an hour without a problem here because this is just a rural road. But then all of a sudden, once again, you're in a community that's sprung up or that was founded along this major thoroughfare. And in order to protect the lives of people, they've put speed bumps in 4 different locations throughout the town to make sure that traffic goes slowly. The reason for that, and you hear a lot of foreigners who would say, yeah, I really hate the speed bumps, and why do they do that? It's ridiculous. Well, there's no money to fund extra highways and just give you that direct route without speed bumps. They have, remember, that one major paved artery that connects my house to the municipal capital, and along that road there are 4 or 5 towns that really need to be protected. It's not a situation where they can build, well, now we've seen enough development in this area and we need a state road or a national highway along this route. They still only have that 2-lane road that connects everybody. And the only way to make sure that they can protect people in towns is to add speed bumps. So be very sure to watch out for those reductor signs. They might appear when you least expect it. And when you do, you need to slam on your brakes and make sure that you're not going 80 and about to destroy your shocks. Couple more signs that I wanted to address. Puente Angosta. You've got narrow bridges. Puente is bridge. Angosta is narrow. Frequently, you might have bridges that aren't necessarily 1 lane and have a seda, but they have this symbol showing that it's a narrow bridge. Here, that sign is also used in the U.S. along 2-lane roads, etc. Here, a Puente Angosta might be a highway that is not big enough, or a bridge that is not big enough to accommodate both a truck and a decent-sized vehicle. And where you might sort of just ignore it in the U.S. or Canada, that sign here might mean, yeah, there's not enough room for you and passing traffic on the bridge. You should slow down and really think about trading opportunities to cross that bridge with a truck. A final one, there are signs that say despacio, which is a great Costa Rican vocabulary word. It means slow. You might have heard lento, you might have heard lerdo if you're in Guanacaste as words that relate to slow, but despacio is a word for slow here, and once again, you should respect it more than you might see in other countries, because the highway department here isn't necessarily taking the same abundant precaution that you would see other places. I feel like in the US, even when it says make a slow turn, caution, etc., the road has still been designed that if somebody flies around that curve, they're going to make it. Here in Costa Rica, if the despacio sign has been put up, there's a very real chance that the road is about to do some crazy curve or some other obstacle that really needs your respect, because they don't have the luxury of spending endless billions of dollars on designing the perfect road with banks and curves that don't go too sharp. They're practical. They have a very limited amount of infrastructure that they can build in this country. And you might see some very crazy turns and other things that mean if you don't really slow down around this, you might end up off the side of the road and in serious trouble. One final note on that, because the infrastructure budget is not what it is in the US or Canada, there's not nearly the amount of safety and abundant availability of all those measures the highways department had in the big industrial power countries of the world. So for example, you will see parts of a highway where there is zero shoulder. You've got absolutely no emergency zone because they only could possibly fit a tiny road down this narrow curving path, or it was simply that there wasn't the budget for infrastructure to really provide what you would expect to see in the US, where even rural roads have a shoulder, they have guardrails at every turn, and lights are provided every 30, 40 yards along major roads. Lights on streets in Costa Rica are seen in urban areas and communities, and there are long stretches of rural road that have zero streetlights above them. It can be a really weird effect to see because you drive around the US or Canada and you just sort of get used to being able to have light everywhere on the road. When you come to a Costa Rica and see a truly dark road, there might be people walking along it. There might be cows that are jumping out. There are all kinds of hazards that can easily enter the road. And there won't be streetlights to the level that you see elsewhere. A lot of people that move to Costa Rica don't drive at night because of those conditions. If you're living in Guanacaste, really you'll see this in action where it's much, much more dangerous to be driving fast at night down one of the highways than you would see in the US. Finally, let's we got a comment that I have to respond to a bit about never telling the truth. That's something that really, one of my realizations over the years is it's not lying. It's not deliberately trying to avoid the truth or trying to lie to people. Sir WM, it's really a cultural thing, not trying to disappoint people by showing a lack of knowledge or by just saying no to a question. Finally, let's get to some driving tips and etiquette. First and foremost, I want to encourage everybody out there watching to relax on Costa Rica's roadways. I see so much less road rage here in Costa Rica because even though conditions are crazy, even though you see people pulling crazy maneuvers and going all over the road, Costa Ricans themselves have a huge tolerance. And especially in Guanacaste, this province I live in, I've seen old truck drivers who've just been on the road their whole lives who couldn't care less about somebody passing them and doing crazy maneuvers on the road. It happens here. You see a very frequent level of maneuvers that would not be allowed in the US or Canada. Here in Costa Rica, the police can't stop you if their vehicle is moving. The traffic police that are designated to handle highways can only establish set road checkpoints where they're sitting alongside and they can stop people. As a result, no one worries about making a lane change without their blinker on. No one cares about tailgating. No one cares about cutting people off or doing all sorts of things that you might get a ticket for in the US. It's very much the Wild West on the road. People take advantage of that. They drive however they freaking please. And as a result, if you're going to get angry about somebody passing without a blinker or cutting you off or, passing you too close, Costa Rica is probably not the right place for you to live long term. Go on the roads and say pura vida, Allow yourself to really relax and not care about all the crazy stuff you see. And in fact, you should be much more actively watching for all of those crazy things happening and focusing on defensive driving, going slow, paying attention to your surroundings, and really not trying to confront anybody, because they will come speeding around you at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And if you try to confront people like that, you're going to end up wasting all of your energy in Costa Rica just angry about drivers. Second of all, I'd recommend that in addition to being careful, you can feel free to do what you want on the roads in terms of maneuvers that could help you significantly. You'll pass your turn. Don't hesitate to pull off to the side of the road, wait a little bit, look behind you, and pull a U-turn in a completely inappropriate spot that you would think, no one in the US would ever allow me to do this on a public road. In Guanacaste, it's a rural area. You don't have a significant police presence. Feel free to take those inventive maneuvers, with a lot of caution, and really you can sort of do whatever you want. And finally, my biggest driving tip, the etiquette here in Costa Rica's roads, is that you should be a lot more communicative than you would be in the US. I can't count the number of times this past week I've given somebody a hand signal from my car. Just today, we had people that I could tell wanted to pass us. I had a client that was 2 cars behind them. Roll down the window, put your hand out, and wave somebody on. Or you pull up to an intersection and you see that there's confusion. You see that nobody knows who should turn. Don't hesitate to blink your lights and wave somebody over in a particular direction. Don't hesitate to pull up to an intersection and put your hand out to allow people to walk across. Really, if you have anything at your disposal that you can use to communicate with people on the road, it's very frequently used here. One last tip that you'll see is that people will blink their lights coming in the opposite direction here on the roads. If they blink 3 or 4 times and try and signal you that way, usually they're telling you that around the bend there are police with one of their stops. You see that when the police set these up, everybody leaving the police stop in both directions starts to signal other drivers as sort of solidarity. Watch out, there's a speed trap just around the way. And it's hilarious because you'll see if you blink at people, all of the cars that aren't meant to be on the road start to pull off. They don't have their papers in line. They don't have a license plate. And you blink at them and they head off one direction or the other. That's extremely common here. You might also see people blink just once or twice, sort of just with the headlights. And that frequently means just watch out. There's a cow, there's somebody crossing the road, there's an accident. But you see people communicating a lot more in cars, where in the US it seems highly formalized and you're not really allowed to honk at people, to wave, to give hand signals to others. And here in Costa Rica, you should feel absolutely welcome to do that. Wow, it was a long one. We're at 8:10 p.m. here on Wednesday, April 20th. I'll be back once again on the 27th for our next live Costa Rica chat. As is tradition with my channel, it's the last chat of the month, and I will be reviewing your questions. Feel free to post them in the comments here so that we can get comments about questions to fill up the next episode. Really appreciate everybody sticking with me here tonight. Everybody who's commented so far, thank you very much. As always, if you're interested in moving to Costa Rica, thinking about purchasing real estate here, email me. My address is at lat10realty.com. Once again, thank you to everybody for joining me. Have a good evening and pura vida.